All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of X Succeed. This is Gearface. I am so pleased to be joined once again today by D. D, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, happy to.
Glad to have you. And today we are talking about, I believe this is our first Red Horizon character together. We are talking about Super Skullman 33. Hopefully, for the rest of this episode, abbreviated to Skullman, so I don't have to say that over and over again.
Fine.
Um, I know a little bit about this guy, pretty much from the last time we talked about Imogene. You brought him out as a comparative character. Other than that, I have no idea, so I'm super interested to get into it. Um, Couple disclaimers, as always, before we get started. Number one, we tend to talk about playing to win on this show. That's what we're going to be talking about this episode. That's not the only way you can play Exceed. You can play Exceed for fun. As a matter of fact, if you're playing Super Skullman at all, odds are you are playing him for fun, not only because he's a fun character, but also because he's all the way up here in Season 1, which has long since rotated out of competitive play, which means that odds are if you're playing Super Skullman, you are doing it in a Legacy tournament or just with friends at a table. The stuff we'll be describing still works just as well in that context, but in general, if the lines of play that we're describing don't sound like fun to you, play the way that does sound fun to you. You'll have more fun that way. Number two, we're going to be pretty prescriptive about strategy on this show. We always are, but with a character this old, especially, the people have had a lot of time to figure out how he works. You might hear D say some things like "always do this, never do that," and sound pretty authoritative. Sound like an authority on that, and D is an authority. But remember to take that stuff with a grain of salt. Exceed's not a solved game, even for a character this old. And if the lines of play that we're describing don't sound like the way you play the character, develop your own lines of play and show us why we're wrong. Yeah, all that said, D, please tell me a little bit about Skullman.
Happy to. Yes. All right. Super Skullman 33. Yes, we can abbreviate it for the rest of the thing, but AKA
Thank
Skullman.
goodness.
Yes. I'll probably still occasionally say the full name because it's fun to say. Is one of the and actually this will probably come up as we do Red Horizon characters. I don't know if it's come up as you've done any others, but so if I say a character is archetypal, right, or the original, or like they are representative of some sort of play style, some sort of thing, better than
Mm.
maybe anybody else in the game. Uh, that's that's not uncommon in season one. Season one, it was, as the name implies, the first season. It had characters that often were exemplary at doing whatever it was they did, and also extreme at doing whatever it was they did.
Right.
And showed, oh, this is what this concept is like, because it's not like the rules have been invented yet to decide how to design characters. Like
Sure,
this
sure.
was just Brad doing stuff, and then some playtesting happened, some dev happened, and stuff got shipped.
Right.
So
So,
this is the archetypal reward-based wild swinger. So there's
okay.
two types of wild swingers in Exceed. Usually, I say two types of false dichotomy, right? But often, folks talking about wild swingers will divide them into consistency-based wild swingers and reward-based wild swingers.
Sure, sure.
Consistency wild swingers, like referencing your Imogene lesson, right? Imogene's a consistency wild swinger. Also, best character in the game, but
Yep.
yeah, no bias here. She is about having more control over your wild swings, making them more consistent. That's why we call it
Sure.
consistency. And generally, like, because you're using wild swings, you have some advantages over other characters. You will have some disadvantages because you're using wild swings as well. But they're not as extreme with consistency wild swingers because you have some ability to manipulate the odds in your favor.
Right.
So Kaka and Marathi are also consistency wild swingers. Reward-based wild swingers. And yes, you've pulled out Dan and Leo for very good reason. They don't particularly do anything, or rather, they may have some things that make their wild swings more consistent. It's rare for them to have none, but they are not fundamentally about consistency. They're not fundamentally about making sure that their stuff will work more often than usual. They're about making it more awesome when it does.
Right.
And Super Skullman 33's ability tells you pretty clearly what he's about. Your wild swings have +1 power.
Right.
Like you deal more damage when you wild swing. You might think maybe the kit has a bunch of things that make them likelier to connect, and there's a couple interesting things that we'll talk about, but not really. And then we exceed at 3 gauge and we go to +2 power and +3 guard.
Okay, so just upping that reward. I mean, the guard could cause some consistency. It could increase some consistency as well, but really, it's just stacking reward on top of it,
Yep,
compounding the reward.
yep, for the most part. Two
Okay,
notable things
okay.
about this ability I want to point out. Well, a few notable things, but two notable things to start with. Uh, the templating here is terrible because it's season 1. We hadn't invented standardized templating yet.
Right.
The templating now would be your wild swings have +2 power and +3 guard, right? But the point is offense and defense, right? You can strike with wild swing and you'll have +2 power, +3 guard. Your opponent can strike with wild swing and you can your opponent can strike and you can respond with the wild swing and you'll have +2 power, +3 guard.
Right.
So either way. And the other notable thing is +2 power is a lot to get for free. There's no resource cost attached to this. In fact, you're actually paying less resources than most people do on regular strikes because you're not using your hands.
Because you're pulling something from your deck instead. Okay, sure.
Yep.
So a consistency wild swinger versus a reward or a payout wild swinger. Back when Rose taught me about Dan, one of the things that she said was that Dan is very, very unlikely to win every strike that he initiates or responds with, but he doesn't have to win that many because he hits really, really hard, and that's kind of like I feel like when people talk about consistency in Exceed, it is frequently about their ability to win games. And I don't think you are a Dan player as well, D. I don't think that you would say that Dan has any trouble winning games consistently.
Correct. I would
Maybe
not
he,
say he has trouble with that.
yeah, maybe he has trouble winning individual strikes consistently, but kind of you zoom out into a more macro lens and you see that it evens out well enough for him. So when we're talking about consistency and reward wild swingers, that's not a statement about their level of power in terms of like the tier list or something. Like a
Right.
reward based wild swinger is totally fine as a character archetype. They're not weak by definition or anything like that.
Correct. Yeah. If you're thinking that consistency, as I believe it is used in some card game circles, means like it performs to your expectations consistently in the context of winning a game. That is not the way that I'm using the term here. So I apologize if that's confusing. I'm using it to refer to uh, ways to make your as you characterize it, individual strikes likelier to be successful. Um,
Right.
but no characters don't win the game off of individual strikes. They might win the game off a few of them if they are very high damage characters. But no one strike is world ending. No one strike decides things unless you commit your entire life to it. Like there's things you can do that can make single strikes decisive. But by default, you'll have time, you'll have space, you'll be able to stretch out your decision making over a longer period of time to correct any mistakes you might make and to account for your opponent making decisions as well.
Sure.
But yeah, so a consistency based wild swinger is one that makes their strikes more consistent. Reward based makes their strikes more rewarding. Both of them have the ability to win games, and by default, there's no reason one is better than the other. Any more than there's a reason they're better than a non-wild swing character, or vice versa. Like Exceed is this is not a hot take in the least, but Exceed's a remarkably well balanced game overall. So it shouldn't be too surprising to hear me say that like not having consistent strikes, winning or not being able to consistently have a strike turn out the way you want to, does not necessarily mean that your character is bad or has problems. It is a weakness you need to deal with. Actually, the primary reason that is that quite true? One of the main reasons that I originally started maining Skullman was because I found it fascinating to try to accommodate his weaknesses. Um,
Okay.
like he has immense strengths. I wanted to point out by pointing out maybe the most. I want to start by pointing out the most ridiculous strength, which is what if at no resource cost you had +2 power and +3 guard for every strike for the rest of the game?
Right.
Now, no resource cost is kind of a lie. This is no resource cost. This is +1 power, but this is once you've spent 3 gauge, now you have +2 power, +3 guard on every strike, and that sounds ridiculous. Other
Right.
people have to like do things in order to do that,
Like
and you don't.
like boost or spend force or something.
Yeah, like other people have to make decisions to do that. You don't have to.
Right.
Um, like you're making decisions outside of strikes, but your strikes are often pretty easy. Um, you will very, very often want to wild swing.
I
Um,
can see why.
I imagine that. Um, there's a little more that goes with that, but anyway, so he has a very obvious powerful thing. What holds him back is that he is not going to be able to get value out of that ability every single time, every single turn, every single strike. Um, I mean, if you let him get value out of that ability, then you are losing by playing against him. Like you that's a problem. Playing as him, don't expect to get value out of it every single strike. Your job is to squeeze as much value out as you can, and more importantly, to make sure that the odds are in your favor at all times.
Okay.
Um, so this is not unlike. Well, I'll talk more about other characters later, I guess. But neutral is the hard part of playing a character like this, of playing these reward-based wild swingers, right? Because they don't necessarily have a way to be more consistent. They are very reliant on, I'm at my favorite range, my hand and deck composition tell me a certain thing that my opponent may or may not also know. Now I need them to sit there and let me hit them, and they're not going to.
Right.
So neutral, the part of the game where players are jockeying for an advantage, maybe changing their positioning, maybe changing the board state with boosts, is often something that these characters will struggle with because they, are awesome once they've won neutral, but it can be very awkward to stay on top. There's additional awkwardness on some of them. What Super Skullman is actually not one of them. Dan is, Leo is. They both have some interesting things about how neutral works for them that make them not really want to play neutral. Skullman can play neutral just fine. He actually has an interesting boost kit with what, in my opinion, one of the strongest boosts in the game, and also some boosts that are pretty terrible. And that's season 1 for you, right?
Right.
That's Road Horizon goes.
It's power budget stuff.
Exactly. It is very common for a kit to be like, oh yeah, lots of value concentrated here, no value or very little value concentrated here.
Right.
Like that means you have some cards that are attack, some cards that are boost, and some cards that are force, and that's fine.
Yep.
That's how it works.
Yep. And you can find one of the beauties of Exceed is that a handful of bad cards and one incredibly good but expensive card is a really good hand.
Mm-hmm.
You can make bad cards work for you by
Mm-hmm.
spending them as force. Okay.
Yep. All right. So, I'm trying to decide if I should go over a little bit more large strategy before we go over the kit, actually. Um, hmm. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to some more stuff later.
Sure.
Let's play a game. This is a well-loved game for those who have been around for a very, very long time. It won't take long to play, because we're gonna play it once for every card, and if it took long, then we'd be here forever. We're playing attack, boost, or force.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, this is a classic game, where you evaluate a kit and you decide which way you're spinning the card. Is it this? Is it this? Or is it this? Face down represents force. So I'm going to talk about what the role each card plays, and while I'm doing this, an important thing to keep in mind: if something's an attack, it means it's an attack in your hands. As in, you're looking at this card in your hands and deciding to play it as an attack from your hands.
Right. Because by default, if it's in your deck, it is an attack because you're a Wild Swing character.
Exactly.
Okay.
And something has to be a pretty significant attack from your hands, or very situationally useful to be something that you'll play from your hands, because you would prefer to strike from your deck. Like it has to outweigh the value of your ability.
Because if I play it from my hand, I don't have the ability to have +2 power, +3 guard on it.
Exactly.
Okay. D, before we get into the game of attack, booster, force, just a quick question about the character ability, because we've talked about, like, this is clearly a really strong thing that I want to be doing, and it sounds to me like I should be exceeding every game.
Mm-hmm.
As we go through and evaluate these cards as attacks and as wild swings, should I assume that I will have my character ability, my exceed mode character ability, for a majority of the game? Or is building gauge kind of difficult enough for me that I'm going to have to spend quite a bit of time on front side?
So at least the first half of the game, you'll be in front side by default. Now, this is also because if you have exceeded, you are now going to be dealing so much damage, the game is almost over.
Sure, right. You've artificially truncated the end of the game to make the ratio seem more skewed in the favor of front side.
Yes, but also let's actually, before I go through the kit in detail, let's just talk specifically about how you could spend 3 gauge to be amazing for the rest of the game.
Right.
Or you can spend 4 gauge to end the game. So this is a card that says 1 to 2, 10, 6, and then it has some other stuff on it, and we don't necessarily need to care about that, to be perfectly honest, because you're spending 4 gauge to hit for 10 on curve, speed 6 range.
Yeah, 2. Yeah, that's going to be good enough.
Yep. If you have this, then you are going to look at 3 gauge and decide whether you want to exceed or wait for 4 gauge. The question of which of those 2 things you're going to use to win the game is a question that you'll have to answer situationally. Often it's going to come down to, did you have this too early and you paid it as force? Did your life get too low and you needed to boost it? Because we'll come back to this boost, but it's insane. Or do you believe that you'll be able to actually secure an opportunity to play this from hands and then just kill someone? because
Sure.
it's very, very good at killing people. Um, so that's the big thing is you're spending a lot of time building up to 3 gauge, and then you're deciding if you are going to be able to get to 4 gauge to threaten this, and then you're also deciding whether you are going to flip, which removes this threat, or if you're going to hold out for this, and spend a little more time in basic mode, not playing with your exceed mode. So this
Right.
is why you
And,
will expect to spend most of your time in your basic mode, even though your exceed mode is awesome.
okay, and both of those payout routes are viable options. I can use both depending on the situation, and uh, it sounds like uh, exceeding in order to uh, I'm not exceeding in order to postpone this card because if I exceed, the game is going to be over before I've built 4 gauge again.
Correct.
So they are like a pure binary. I will do one or the other because the game won't last long enough for me to do both.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. If the game might have lasted long enough to do both, then you're probably stretching it into like you playing the other ultra, or paying force from gauge. Like you're not going to be
Right.
looking at exceed mode KAPLOW almost ever.
Okay. Makes sense.
You'll be squeezing the rest of the game into a shorter number of strikes than that. All right,
Okay. Sounds
that all
good.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Let's do our game now.
Yeah. All right. So, um, 3 to 5, 1, 6. This is extremely weird because it has a decent range, an awful power value, but a fantastic speed value for its range.
Right.
It has ignore armor, which is basically a joke as far as I can tell. Um, it it's 1 power, so it will stun anything without guard, which means that it will by default stun anything. But ignoring armor is a little extra because if they have armor, they probably have guard. If they
Sure.
have
Yeah.
if they EX, then they have exactly 1 guard. Um, and uh, if you're wondering what is this ever 2 power, is this ever 3 power? This is not a card that you will play with your ability, and also we're evaluating based on hands anyway.
Right.
This is actually like the worst card to wild swing, generally speaking.
Is it because it just doesn't overlap with where you would otherwise like to be?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. By the time we're done here, we'll have gone over every range, but your favorite range, as a spoiler, is 2.
Okay.
Um, not the most shocking if you've looked at the other 3 characters we pulled out. Range 2 is pretty good for
Yeah.
wild
Fair
swingers.
point. Actually. So he's archetypal to wild swingers in a lot of ways. He established that wild swingers love range too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly. And he does it both explicitly and implicitly, which I think is terribly fun. All right. So notably, this card, which does not hit at range 2, is there for a weakness. It is a thing that it is in your deck that if you don't have it in your hand or in your discard pile, you know it's in your deck and you have to worry about that.
Okay.
All right, so the value we're giving up, ignore armor, like I said, does not typically matter very much. Hit, close, 3 gain advantage. That's obviously great. Um, from 3 to 5, that means you are going to range 1 or range 2, and those are considerably better for you than range 5 or range 4. And advantage means now it's your turn, you can do whatever you want. That's great. It is also going to confirm some gauge, which, as we've discussed, you can leverage pretty bloody well. So, attack is solid, low value, but does a lot of other useful things, right? This is kind of it's not a utility option in the framework of the attack triangle, but it is mostly you're using it for all the stuff it does that aren't damage or even aren't really winning
It,
strikes.
it's a role player.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you strike at range 4 and your opponent goes, well, I'll play sweep. And you go, yes, I knew I was eating 5 damage and a random card. And no one was surprised. But you decided it was worth 5 damage in a card to be at range 1 with advantage. Now, you may not
Right.
always do that because that's very, very expensive. But sometimes you might.
Does looking very very briefly at his other range bands, and you mentioning that this is his kind of the card that doesn't hit close up. Does that mean that Skullman doesn't really have a move don't move mix up from opening positions? Like it looks like everything he might be
He does
doing
not.
is
That's
going to
correct.
be closing in. Okay.
Correct. He has no opening mix up. It is block, dive, or zap.
Okay.
Block is a very real part of this opening mix up, by the way, because the other two, since you don't have a don't move, your don't move is block, which means that if you strike on turn 1, your opponent is very likely to play a counterattack like sweep or focus. Keep that in mind. Like I think it's well known that you can use block on very early, even on turn 1, to like build gauge. It also has a good chance of wasting your opponent's answers. So by all
And
means
sweep
block.
is a really, really, really high value card. So
Yes.
wasting an opponent's sweep is amazing. And so is
Yes.
focus.
Yes. So heavily consider that this is not the only thing you can open with. Dive is fine. Block is equally good because it also does a lot of things you want. Generally, the existence of this card also means people won't cross out. Where typically, if they're like, "Oh, you like to move in, you're going to play dive if you can," they will want to play cross. But this is a speed 6 thing. It catches cross. People are not likely to cross against you, and that means your block is even better because it's not positioning negative.
Okay, sure.
So, good attack clearly does valuable things for you. Um, the boost. Normally we go through all the attacks, all the boosts, but this time we're not going to do that. Draw 3. Return a card from your hand to the top of your deck. Don't draw this turn. What that means is skip your draw step. Don't draw or discard.
Okay.
I think was the ruling that I actually have to check, but it changed at one point. Hold on. Do we have access to the other one?
So if through some means I've gotten over my hand size limit and I played this card, you're saying I wouldn't have to discard for end of turn.
Right. You draw 3. Yeah. So you're at 6 or 7 cards. Sorry, for simplicity, 7 cards. Play this. Draw 3. Now you're at 9 because one went away and then you drew
Took
3.
one out of your hand, sure.
Yep. Put one on top of your deck. Now you're at 8. Now it's your opponent's turn. You're still at 8.
Okay,
Like
cool.
you skip your draw step. I'm gonna check Dan real quick. You've already done a Dan lesson, so it's not spoiling anything.
Sure have.
Yeah. Skip your draw step is the wording on the more modern template.
Okay.
Anyway, there is some old template jank that we will be dealing with as we go, but that's okay. So this is a consistency button. This is exactly the sort of thing I was describing when I was talking about having ways to make your wild swings more consistent. You can literally decide what your next attack is. That's
Right.
great.
And therefore you can decide what gets your bonus power.
Yep.
Okay.
And yeah, that's pretty awesome. So it's useful also, even if we didn't think about that, right? It's just, well, let's look at the value comparison here. This is an ultra boost that says put a card from your hand on top of your deck, skip your draw step. So
Right.
you go down 2 cards, one of which is an ultra.
Sure.
On this one, you draw 3, then put a card from your hand on top of your deck. And
Yeah.
it's also
I
on a
mean,
special.
just the like if you didn't put anything on top of your deck, the
It's
I
a
mean
draw 3
the
boost, and that would
yeah
be
the
wild.
and you don't draw for end of turn, but hey, listen, you still drew more than you spent. That's a decent economic upside.
Yeah, that's a bit like the now draw 2 boosts that show up quite a bit in later seasons.
Yeah.
But since you do place it on top of the deck and you don't draw for turn, it's not like it's economically wild, but it is better than just the ability to ensure your top deck. It also means that if you have a hand that might be good enough, you have a statistically higher chance of pulling into something that is good enough, or at least to tell you what you're going to be dealing with next. In
Right.
particular, um, you like having a hand. You don't necessarily need one, but more cards in hands means more likely, like you're more likely to have EXs. And then if you can have a bunch of cards in hand and then draw several cards, you can filter for EXs, which are very, very powerful.
Sure. And
Um,
even on a wild swing character, the one, among the downsides of wild swinging is that you can't EX them. So
mhm.
even for a character who the majority of their offense is going to be coming from their deck, if you have a EX deck in your hand, I assume you're quite happy about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most, it all the usual reasons. But okay, so solid attack serves a purpose. Solid boost serves a purpose. This is a card that's actually both.
Okay.
Um, it might end up being not quite, but yeah. So, in particular, though, this is a card that for most of the game, we hope will not be an attack because we won't be in the range for its work. Um,
Sure, I see. Yeah, it's an attack when things have gone wrong.
yes,
Okay.
it is an attack for getting you into a better position, probably at some amount of significant cost, right? If they play focus, you ignore the armor and take a little less damage. If they play sweep, you're in trouble, but you at least got in. And depending on what you're up against, it might be worth it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, most of the time you will expect this to be a boost because you don't want to be playing, you want to be at a range where you can't play the attack reasonably. Um, Against owners, you might well hold it instead of playing the boost and just go, okay, well, they're going to get out. And then once they do, I'll jump back in with this.
Right. Okay.
But yeah. They're very much a tool. And actually, a lot of these are, well, that's not quite true, but yeah, very much a tool that serves a purpose, not just a good smashy card, not something that looks impressive with your ability. All right, that's that. It's notable. Now, bang bang bang. Uh, oh, I have to do a brief aside here. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, please.
Super Skullman 33's lore
Yes.
is that he loved superheroes. He was reading the back of a cereal box, um, and was inspired by the like superhero things that he saw on it. And then the next time he leapt to the defense of somebody who was being bullied, he shut his eyes and started flailing and making sound effects with his mouth, just yelling the sound effects that he saw in comics or on the back of cereal boxes or whatever. Um, and it gave him superpowers.
Red Horizon.
Red Horizon lore is magnificent.
So D, all just in by templating standards, all exceed card attack names at the top of the card are in all caps all the time.
Yes,
But Super Skullman's attacks are in all caps. Like
they should be anyway because
yeah, more so when I write the written guide, they will be in all caps.
good. Well,
Okay.
look at the card art.
Yeah.
Bang bang
Oh
bang.
yeah. Bang bang bang.
Zap.
Yep.
This one I don't know why it says Bing Bong. I see Kick and Pow. I won't worry about it. Splam, KAPLOW, Zing Zing Zing.
Yep.
He makes sound effects, and those sound effects do extraordinary things. That's his shtick.
Perfect.
So yeah, so we'll be going through that. I don't know why there's one exception. Again, weird Red Horizon stuff. There's just randomly one exception.
It's also the one that doesn't have any exclamation marks. I don't like this card already.
It's the strangest thing. It might be the weirdest card in the kit, but we'll come back to that.
Okay.
All right, Bang Bang Bang. 1 2 3 6. That's on curve at 2, which we know in advance is our favorite range, but we'll be seeing in a bit is definitely our favorite range.
Right.
3 power, not exactly amazing. I mean, becomes 4, which is not generally an important breakpoint against many things. Becomes 5 here, and that's a lot better. It's really just that we're looking at value. Like dealing 5 damage at speed 6 is something that most people aren't going to be doing, especially not regularly. So it's not that it hits a great breakpoint by getting power bonus. It's that we're doing it, and they probably can't do anything about it because we're coming in at speed 6.
Sure. It's just a value button rather than a breakpoint button at that point.
Yep. It also is one of the early so-called Hadokins. It is loopable, right? So this is this text is a lie because of templating issues, but it's after if you hit, you may return this to the top of your deck, and at the top card of your discard pile to your gauge, right?
Oh, this is one of those. Okay, you hit with it. Now it's been removed from play, so you didn't hit with anything. So we needed to kind of errata that.
Yeah, there's a universal errata. Technically, this is the errata version. It's a mouthful, but it works like Hadoken if you know Hadoken and Ryu's kit. It is just if you hit, you get to use it again.
Okay, that is
and you
the
still
intent.
get gauge. Yeah, like you still get gauge from your discard pile. To be clear,
Right.
If you have no discard pile, not so good. But don't worry, you'll have a discard pile because that's not going to be played on turn 1. All right, so it's loopable, which means that you can kind of hold over your opponent's head. Hey, I have a speed 6, 3, 4, 5 power. I say 4 or 5 generally. That I can play whenever I want. Are you willing to stand here in range and trade with me? Because how many sweeps do you actually have?
Right.
This will generally pressure them to leave. It's one of many things that will pressure them to leave, which is not a thing that you actually want them to do, but it's a thing that they'll have no choice but to do. Because if you just keep doing this, they will run out of the ability to trade up against it.
Everybody's got 2 sweeps, 2 focuses, maybe another card. You have a conceivably infinite number of these.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you're never spending cards from hand to do it, and they probably are, right? Like,
right.
How many? If they have their hands, if they have all 4 of those in their hands, focus, focus, sweep, sweep, they can still respond a number of times. But you still have all the cards you had in your hand before as you were doing this.
Sure.
All right. The boost. Your Wild Swings have +2 power and +1 speed. Oh boy.
Oh, yeah. In addition to your
character ability. So they either have +3 power and +1 speed, which is a completely insane set of bonuses.
Yes.
Or they have +4 power, +1 speed, and +3 guard, which is a more insane set of bonuses.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It's marvelous. And by the way, as long as the attack hits, as long as you're careful not to play in a situation where it can miss, because this returns to the top of your deck, using the attack doesn't cost you the boost.
Oh, sure. So when we get to break the rules of our game here, this is as long as you play the attack first, it can always be both.
Yes. And
Okay.
and it's mostly going to be is now the moment when I play the boost. And the answer is when your opponent moved out of range of the attack, well, you had to do something to move back into range. Now you've drawn it. Now you decide if you play the attack again or if you play the boost.
Right.
But yeah, no, this boost is insane. Like the extra speed is nice and it will matter, and we'll look at your cards because you are a speed sensitive character, by the way. Just at a quick glance, 0 printed guard means that you don't like being slower than your opponent.
Sure.
Um,
And
probably
three
obvious.
guard from your exceed ability is
I
helpful,
see.
but not enough for to be totally safe with anything.
Yeah, it's dicey. It's nice, but it's dicey. The main value of that 3 guard, in my opinion, is that your assaults and your assault likes, which we'll look at your special in a minute, and your dives will still move forward when your opponent like runs away. When they grasp, your dive will still miss, but you will stay relatively close. Or at least in insane range. If they cross your assault line forward, now you're range 2, and that's fine. Right?
Right.
Like you didn't have to stop what you were doing. So you still got to do whatever that thing was that you were moving forward on because you have used another. That's regarding your usually automatically stuns because your opponent's going to read your exceed ability and say, "Oh, I guess I'm not playing attack. Only 3 power. I'm going to get stuns on you." Like they won't be planning on it, so they probably won't be able to do that. But you can still provide a little bit of value. But mostly it's +2 power, which means that this is mostly +4 power, +1 speed, which is completely insane.
Right. Yeah. I guess the +3 guard is there too, but it's not like we needed any help selling ourselves on +4 power, +1 speed.
Yep. It is notable that this is tied with ZAAAAP for the fastest special in the kit, which means that our +1 speed may or not be helping to ensure that we're actually hitting with anything. Like it helps a little, right? But we also pass turn when we play this.
Right.
And like +1 speed is kind of like saying I didn't really pass turn in terms of the speed tie because you were going to win its speed tie. Now you would lose it, but you have +1 speed, so now you're ahead.
Now
of
you'll lose a higher threshold of speed tie.
Yeah, like you're back where you were essentially.
Right.
And if the opponent passes the turn back to you, they're asking to get destroyed. But if they run far away, where now you have to spend resources to get back in, you may not have any options left, and you're just hoping that your top deck is good. Well, you can see why this boost is named I'm sure I'll hit something.
Sure.
It's not a super costly boost though. Like for the amount of reward that you're threatening here, 1 force and a special, a good special, like a decent special as we've discussed, is not a very high price to pay. There are folks who pay good money there are folks who will pay an ultra in a force to get +4 power in a play.
Sure.
One speed and 3 power, even if you're just in basic mode, is easily worth a special in a force. So awesome boost, extremely threatening. Again, mostly intensifies the reward, but it does it now in a way that is how do I put this? Oh, I should have put it this way. It's a breakpoint, right? 3 power on a bunch of things means that now your opponent can't even play focus, can't even play sweep. They have to try to weather the storm, and then they could get spiked. It's hard for them to play safe because you can just crush anything slower than you with +3 power, and the speed
And
means that it's harder for them to play fast.
from what we've seen, so I know we've only gone over 2 cards, but from what we've seen so far, he does have a consistency tool in quick change, and he has a reward like a big upside multiplier tool, and I'm sure I'll hit something. I assume that it is very difficult to have I'm sure I'll hit something in play and then also know what's on top of your know for sure what's on top of your deck. That isn't really the kind of thing that he can guarantee, right?
It is. There's specific ways to do it, and generally they mean the opponent didn't move.
Okay.
If the opponent's if you play this and you're at range 2, and the opponent passes turn and you're still at range 2, he can be insanely punishing. Like you can quick change, but honestly, he has some better things he can do than just quick change there.
Okay.
Because they stayed at your favorite range. You put 2 boosts into play, and one of them was this one. That they have sealed their fate.
Right.
Um, Generally, what happens
So
is you put this into play. They move to a range that isn't 2, and you go, all right, are they at 1 or 3? Oh, all right. I was gonna save this for later, but all right. The grand secret about why you will be able to get enough value out of your ability despite having not a particularly consistent kit is this. The normals exist. Everybody in
Yes,
the
they do.
game everybody in the game fights at ranges 1 to 3 sometimes,
Yep.
um, including you. So, you know, if you land a few hits in there and you get extra free value on those hits, then you're doing okay. Um, like if you were a zoner who had this ability, if you were trying to fight at long range with this ability, you would have problems because the normals do not support that
Because
as
this is half your deck.
yeah, this is half your deck rounding, and yeah, you need to be at a range where your entire deck is consistent. And most people are going to occasionally need to be at close range because half their deck is these cards, which are work at ranges 1 to 3, arguably 4, but there's only one of them. So,
Sure.
for that reason, you'll get chances, but you will very often have to make decisions where you're not at range 2. You're at range 1 or 3, maybe 4, but really 1 or 3, when you're like, okay, this is not a range where I'm non-functional. This is just not a range where I'm optimal. Now, do I swing for the fences with this, or do I step back and do something else, or just literally step back to reimpose my threat, or do I play another boost so that even though I'm not at my optimal range, I'm like twice as threatening as I was, but now they have another chance to move out of range.
Right.
So those are interesting decisions that will come up during play. Uh, the the only hard and fast rule I want to give right now, because we'll talk about the kit in an overview after we go through things individually again, kind of backwards, but that's how I want to do it. The only hard and fast rule right now is your favorite range is 2.
Okay.
Um, and it will become very obvious as we continue why that is. Here's one, by the way. This doesn't work at 3.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't work at 4. So we can strike 3 and 4 from one card. But in our game of attack, boost, and force, the thing we can say for sure, like the first one, is that this probably isn't force. Um, and it's probably going to be an attack and then also a boost. It's
Right.
just a question of when does it become a boost.
This is both but it's a tough decision about how you're holding it and when to deploy it. This is both because you can do both.
Yep.
Okay.
But importantly, because this one is both, this will become a boost eventually. It's just a question of when.
Sure. Okay.
So you generally don't want to play this as a risk, or at least not as a very high risk, right? If your opponent initiates at range 2 and you're like, all right, they're saying by initiating at range 2 that they're playing cross because they know I'm threatening this,
Right.
but maybe they're lying, right? Sometimes check them, sometimes don't. You don't want to lose this to cross, but you also can't let people get away with cheeky stuff because you never tried to check them. So um, it's part of having a strategy. All right, so another fantastic card. This one is actually obviously higher value than ZAAAAP in terms of the numbers on it, but it doesn't move you closer. It just allows you to play the boost, which is insane. Okay, I think we've gone over all the good specials. Now then.
Oh
Uh,
no.
all right. So, keeping in mind that we're talking about cards that you play from your hands.
Right.
This before effect
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Okay. This is a 135.
It's a 1/3/5, and
Okay.
that's all. Uh, this beats your opponent responding with range 1 assault. There you go. That's what it beats. I found something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and
That's
dive.
that
If
dive.
they
I guess
dive.
I mean at range 1 it beats Spike. We're
Uh,
we're
it
really
does.
cooking now.
Yeah, yeah, you can cover spike with it. I would
Mhm.
say it beats block, but, that's because now they won't block your other attacks. Anyway,
True. Yeah.
uh, so we have a phenomenally bad attack to play from hands. I will say an attack that you should never play from hands, by default. We gave the previous disclaimer about nevers and always. So, keeping that disclaimer in mind, never play this from hands.
Sure.
1/3/5 with no text is just awful. Like, holy cow. Um, all right, well, what about the boost? This is just like that issue. Look at the top card of your deck. Hey, another consistency tool. You may discard it or put it back. You may strike. That's a lot of mays.
Yeah.
It's a weird number of mays, actually. Um, so, looking at the top card of your deck, you then decide So this is almost always your striking, but if you're using this as a Hail Mary, so there's situations where you're like, I'm using this to improve my odds, or I'm using this because I have nothing in hands. My deck is not perfect. My deck may be thin, but it's got like grasp and dive in it, which have disparate ranges. They're not going to both work at the same range. So you go,
Right.
okay, I need to make sure that my deck hits. You look at the top of your card. You look at the top card, and you go, okay, if this one doesn't hit, I discard it, and then I wild swing. If it does, leave it in place, and then I wild swing. Uh, Sometimes what you will do is you will look at the top card of your deck, put it back, and strike from hands. Where now you know what your wild swing is, so that you can use that information as your opponent, does whatever their turn is next. But you're not using it in this strike because it wasn't good in this strike, or it wasn't what you wanted in this strike.
Sure. Okay, so then you see what's on top of your deck, and then you reposition mid strike to make use of it on defense or something.
Yeah, generally, like the most common way to do that is like when you already are planning on playing an assault or an EX assault, because that's my favorite normal.
Yep.
You boost this, look at it, put it back, or if it's something that you really don't want at range one, like Spike. But by default, like look at it, put it back. Now you have advantage and you're at range one, and you're deciding, am I actually using the thing that I saw or not?
Right.
But this is also just a good way to like, yeah, to how to put it. In the use case where you see a card that you think will make your wild swings inconsistent, whether you're using it now or later, throwing it away is not a bad thing. Like just picking it, like discarding a card you don't want it in your deck from your deck means that you have improved your overall odds. That makes you a little
So
bit more consistent. That's something you need.
you see a block come up, you're like, awesome. I don't want to hit with this. I don't want a wild swing with it. I don't really want it in my deck.
Yeah, depending. I will say that despite how much I trash talk block, right? Because block is generally very low value.
Right.
Gauge is good enough for you that block is maybe not a thing that you'll want to throw away, but it is definitely a thing you don't want to initiate with. Like
Okay.
that part for sure. Um, Depending on how much force you have at your disposal, you might leave that block in place so that you can defend against your opponent's attack with it, or allow yourself to draw it so that you can parry or so that you can play it from hand at a later point. Um, but yeah, so this boost is very nice. It does a lot of things. You will almost never not strike. The cases where you don't strike is where you go, oh, that's a card I really want to draw. I guess I'll put it back and in my turn. Um,
Right.
that feels pretty bad because you just kind of discarded this to do nothing. Preparing would have been better. You would have gotten to keep this and draw another card. So usually you prefer every other use case of this, but it has a bunch of different use cases because yeah, you're making more choices than it looks like because you're also choosing what to strike with, right? So you're making these choices and also you're deciding what you're striking with and even that you're striking.
Sure. Sure.
Mhm.
Um, so seems like solid boost, abysmal attack as long as it's from hand. If it's coming from my deck, this is a perfectly reasonable card. This is
Mhm.
more. It's assault, but more, but without
Yeah.
advantage, I guess.
Yeah. From your deck, this is it's not even more, right? Like from your deck, because assaults already has 4
Oh,
power.
and assault also benefits from my
Yeah,
character ability. It
it's
evens
assault but
up with
less.
assault.
Yeah,
Right. Actually,
it's
yeah.
assault without advantage. However, in particular with +3 guard, having an extra assault is fantastic. Even if it
Sure.
doesn't have advantage on it, because you can't be grasped. You're just hitting for 6. Like they
Right.
won't be able to trade up against you forever.
Right. Okay.
So
And
decent
but
for back.
so if I see this in my hand, obviously I'm not striking with it. But it also doesn't really seem like the kind of thing that I am likely to put on top of my deck with something like quick change. Like it, if I get it as a wild swing, awesome. But I'm probably not trying to set it up as a wild swing. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's not amazing. It's fine. It's a card that you're glad that you have in your deck to wild swing. It's a card that you never want to play from hand as an attack. Uh,
Right.
but it's a good boost that also kind of helps your overall consistency. So yeah, we have very clearly this is a boost. It's not an attack. It's also fine to be forced because as much as I love all the use cases of this boost is I'm discarding a card and probably striking. That's going down a card, and even if I'm striking with the wild swing, I'm not drawing any cards this turn.
Sure.
That is on the pricey side as far as turns go.
Sure. And
Sometimes to be
after we
forced.
talk about the whole kit, I might ask you some stuff about like economy for wild swing
Mhm.
characters. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the short version is from other lessons I've had, even if you are doing most of your offense from your deck, you do still need a hand.
Yes. Yeah, Wild Swing
Okay.
characters actually tend to be among the more economy sensitive characters. Like grapplers and Wild Swingers are the sets that care a ton about resources because
Right.
Wild Swingers tend to live and die by their resources because if they aren't winning neutral, they can't win strikes at all. Like they rely on their attacks working and their since Wild Swinging is you are swinging out of a deck of probabilities, you are not going to. Sorry, I just moved this card. I wasn't gesturing at it, but anyway,
Oh, it's all good.
like anyway, there's a fundamental weakness to Wild Swinging, just like there are fundamental strengths to it. And so,
Right.
if you can't get into position, if you can't play neutral as well as your opponents, then you're gonna be eating those disadvantages pretty heavily.
Right. So you can strike from the top of your deck. You cannot boost from the top of your deck, and you cannot spend force from the top of your deck. You don't
Mhm,
have the ability to just reposition at will from here.
mhm.
So even the ability to spend force from hand, it means you need a hand
Yeah,
or gauge, but it means you need resources.
yeah, you need resources.
Okay.
Um, yeah. All right. I'm actually gonna do this one next.
Sure.
All right, so we have another before movement. So these both have an effective range of 1 to 3. If we, ignore that you're never playing this from hand.
Right.
Um, this is if you did not move past the opponent. So this is the reverse Tatsu, where you don't want to jump over them. +3 power. Um, so it's a 2 to 3 5 4 or a 1 2 4.
Yes.
Janky stat line, notably awful at range 1. Um, 2 damage is not much. 3 damage is not much. 4 damage is still not all that much. So even if we look
And
at your ability,
four speed is not much.
and 4 speed is not much. Um,
Yeah.
so we're not particularly impressed by this, even if we think about the ability at range 1. Um, so we have another kind of strike against range 1 here. Range 2 and 3, though, this looks a lot better. And in fact, our ability makes that start to look really stupid, where we can hit 7 in Exceed mode, and 7 is a wonderful number.
Sure.
Um, I very much like dealing 7 damage. Um,
Yeah. Almost as much as you like dealing 8, I think.
almost as much. That's correct. That said, this is almost never an attack. It's very situational. It's kind of on the slow side. Uh, you'll maybe you exit at range 3, and then it looks kind of scary because it's a bigger, scarier assault sort of, and it puts you at range 2, which is nice. But what also puts you at range 2 is this boost.
Yep.
Move 1 and strike. That is 1 force. That is a kind of. It looks like a high price. It's one that you'll pay. Because move 1 and strike is extremely dangerous. When you do it, it is saying, "Oh, we're at range 1 or 3, and you thought you were safe, but you're not." Um, or even if it's not, if you know your top deck for some reason, and your opponent's like, you knew your top deck, I'm moving to this other range. Maybe they go from 1 to 3, maybe they go from 3 to 1. You're like, okay, that's fine. Again, I'm changing the board and I'm striking with whatever it was that I was trying to set up. Um, like it is often going to be good enough to move 1 space. To be clear, when you're
So
looking at the way your cards work.
is this often then like a second boost you'll play? You'll do something that then provokes a response. Something like, for example, I'm sure I'll hit something
Mm.
that provokes a response. Your opponent does something, and then you use this to end neutral on your terms.
Yeah, I'll say it's actually fairly often the second boost to be played, no matter who played the first one. Um,
Oh, okay, sure. Because it's also a diffusal tool.
it can be. So
Okay,
if they play speed, you can go to range 1 and strike, right? Because you were at range 2 and they played +2 speed, and you're like, okay, well, my whole deck looks a lot sketchier if they have +2 speed in play and I don't. Let me go to
right.
range 1 and use the sweep of the focus in my hand, or look for 1 in my deck. Um, they like that's honestly the main case where you'll boost it in response to a boost on their side. But there are various other boosts where it can be a situationally useful thing. That's more the character specific stuff. I'm just thinking about the normal boost though.
Sure, sure.
Uh, but yeah, it's not often going to be. I'm doing this on my turn when we're at neutral, and I just want to change my range by 1 because it's often going to be just okay. I'll move 1 space. Now I'm at my favorite range. I'm just as threatening. It was more efficient. And I don't think that they will be able to overturn it so dramatically that I needed to strike right now. That
Right.
said,
the use case for this boost then is more of like a combo thing when you're doing something else at the same time.
Yeah, or if you know your
Okay.
opponent is like they have built up resources and they are about to start setting up, and you won't be able to outlast them. Um, if they do, like they are a character with a lot of strong boosts, and you're like, okay, well, they have just changed cards to rebuild their hands. Like if I just move one space, then they'll start boosting, and they'll be doing it every turn for the rest of the game. Well, not quite, but it feels that way. They're like, all right,
Right.
let's not do that. Let me just kill you now, right?
Right. So
Um,
you'll use it when it's a time sensitive situation or a turn sensitive situation.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
it is
Okay.
great at being the oh, actually, I'm not sure that I can, keep up with you in the next neutral exchange. I'm going to lose the next neutral exchange, but let me just win the strike real quick.
Real
Um,
fast. Right. Okay.
yeah, and committing the extra force tends to mean that you'll lose the next neutral exchange. Right? Like you're like, all right, I'll pay a bunch of resources. This card, another card, striking, whether from hand or from deck. Even from deck, you're still down 2 cards. Like, all right, that's
Right.
a lot of resources. You still won the strike because you did that on purpose. But after that, you will then be more vulnerable.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, attack situational, attack. Uh, you know, I'm sometimes okay seeing this from deck because it's a mid speed and mid speeds are nice, but uh, it's super awkward at range 1 because it just does so little damage, and it's not safe at any other range. And people are often going to be trying to defend on curve against you, so it doesn't work all that well at range 3 even. So almost always for me a boost.
Okay.
Uh,
Makes sense.
all right, let's look at this card. 2 to 3, 4, 4. Okay, once again, range 1 not showing up all that great in our results. Range 2 still looking good. 4 speed. All right, well at range 3, this is still a mid speed, but it's like a not the slowest mid speed. It beats Spike. And
Right.
ignore guard tells us it's a mid speed. Cool. It's got ignore guard on it and it's speed 4. Yep, that sounds like a mid speed to me.
Right.
It beats Spike at ranges 2 and 3. Yeah, neat. You're faster than them. Uh,
It's kind of like a dive that doesn't move you.
yeah, yeah.
It's a mid speed at range 3. It probably beats everything slower than it.
Yep. It's also
Okay.
a very, very weird range 1 card. Because the only reason this after is on this card is because you might wild swing it at range 1.
Okay.
So after gain 4 armor on a card that has ignore guard.
What is possibly other than stun immune things? What is possibly trading with this?
Right. And the answer is if you didn't hit them, then that
Right.
armor might be useful,
Right.
which
Okay.
means
So
you want it's for the range 1 use case.
the situations where you are using both lines of effects of this card are pretty rare.
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
it really shouldn't be a thing.
Right.
But yeah, so once again, from the perspective of playing cards from hands, we're looking at 2 to 3, 4, 4, ignore guard. We don't care about the after, because if the after is happening, we missed. And if we missed, like, we either were stuns, or we deliberately played it at the wrong range. And why would we do that from hand? We're not doing that.
Right.
So 2, 3, 4, 4, ignore guard is still fine, though. Like, as noted, that's kind of another dive. It's a dive that doesn't move you. And since we like ranges 2 and 3 just fine from everything we can tell, well, for most things we can tell, that's respectable. So we have a respectable mid speed, not super high damage. Our breakpoints with our ability don't really matter here. It goes to 5 or maybe 6, but like it ignores guard anyway. There are very, very few armor breakpoints of 5 or 4. There are a couple, but like extremely situational. So we don't particularly care about the extra power other than it's nice to do more damage. But yeah, okay, respectable mid speed. Fear
Yep.
not, citizen. This boost. +3 armor and +3 guard for 0 force.
Yeah. I mean, our closest point of comparison here. This is more numbers than this.
Yeah, yeah. It's defend +2. It
Yep.
also, however, says when an opponent moves past you, discard this. Um, this has some interesting effects. So
Okay.
the main purpose of this boost, if it isn't, I don't know how obvious this is, but the main purpose of this boost is when you are getting zoned by a projectile user, and you go, okay,
Oh, okay. Sure.
like I'm just going to ignore your next projectile and play dive.
Right.
Like you want to come all the way over here to turn this off? Please be my guest. Which they
Right.
won't,
Yeah.
by the way.
That will do what I wanted to do anyway, but it'll save me a dive and make you spend force.
Yeah. And yes, you do want to have a dive or an assault, something that is an attack with movement, so that when they strike to turn this boost off, you still are moving forward.
Right. Sure.
But yes, that's the just a again quick aside because I love the flavor. Right? It is he is standing between the enemy and a civilian, so
Right.
the
So
zoner is the natural use case.
they'll have to move past him. Sure.
Yep. But yeah, but he'll tank those bullets, right? So
Right.
whatever plasma's being chucked his way, he will take. Um,
Right.
So that's the main use case is against a zoner because we have seen one very good anti-zoning tool and nothing else.
Right.
But this is another one, and it's pretty valuable for that.
Sure.
It's also interesting because the potential value of this is often going to pressure the opponent into doing things that are in the long run very good for you. For example, right, you boost this and
Oh,
say,
sure.
"Want to corner yourself?"
Right. Right. Okay.
Like
So
even Ryu, who can do it for free, still is putting
still
himself in the
doesn't
corner by doing it.
still doesn't want to be there. Sure.
Yeah.
So conceivably, my opponent could could discard this by doing something in neutral, by playing run, by area shifting me if I was in a season 7 matchup or something. They could do it outside of a strike. But if they dive me and I play focus, for example, they have crossed
Then
over me.
yeah, then they knock it
It,
out.
it would knock out at that point. I would not get my armor.
Correct.
Okay.
It is discarded during that before effect because they moved past you during that before effect.
Gotcha. Okay. And I mean, in the situation that you were describing earlier with a like a zoner tech, uh, it would be a pretty specific kind of card that would allow you to discard it during a strike.
Yeah. There's a I don't know if I'm spoiling. Have you done Ulrich already?
Yes, I have.
All right, good. Yeah, so those cards exist, but they're not very common.
Right. Sure.
The move past the opponent or the advance eights, which is pretty rare,
Right.
but does
Right.
exist. Like that kind of stuff is uncommon, but can theoretically happen. For the most part, you're not expecting them to jump past you if they're starting out at range 4 or greater. You are
Right.
expecting them to go, oh, well, that sucks. You have plus armor, plus 3 guard, and then make a hard decision about what they want to do about it.
Right. Okay.
If they're at range 3 or closer, then yeah, dive becomes a relevant consideration. Notably, at ranges 1 or 2, it still makes it pretty awkward for them to play dive. This is especially true if you are toward the edge, which is not, by the way, like I'm not saying you want to be close to the edge. You generally don't, but you don't have a very strong preference that way. You want to be close
Right.
to your opponent, and you'll get there how you get there. Um,
Right.
but like that typically means you'll be in the center 5 and maybe the center 3, which is a grappler tendency. But um, during the windows in which your opponent has run away from you or done something else to change neutral, and you go, okay, well, I want them closer. Let me play this. I'm fine with them diving because it moves them back to where I want them to be. Or if you're at range 1 or 2, I'm very fine with them diving because it won't even hit me. Like,
Right.
I didn't care about the armor anyway. Um, but yeah, so it's generally useful as a manipulative tool in that regard. And then as a value tool in all cases where it's not a positioning manipulation tool.
Right. Sure. If you are being zoned or something, if you uh just need armor, this is armor.
Yep. Yeah, so I
Okay.
particularly like having, an assault in hand, playing this at range 1, and watching the opponent go, I guess I'll pay 2 force. And I'm like, cool, you paid 2 force, and I didn't. I discarded a card I wasn't going to use at range 1 anyway.
Right.
You probably put yourself in the corner. Neat, I'll wild swing now. And then if they strike at range 1, I go, okay, I'll play the assault from hands. Murders your
Play yourself
dive.
from hand.
If you play
Almost definitely
cross,
trade up.
yeah, if they play cross, I'm now at range 2 and it's my turn.
Yeah.
So, and I took 0. So like I spent an assault, but I kind of still won that strike, honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
In
Absolutely.
most matchups. So yeah.
Okay.
We have
So in our game, it sounds like this is mostly a boost.
yeah. When it's it's an attack that we are happy to wild swing at range 2, even though sometimes it won't win because it's a mid speed. They have to play that role.
Right.
If we're playing this from hand, it's probably as an attack at range 3, and that is also the range at which we are least likely to want to play the boost.
Yep, sure.
At ranges 1 and 4+, we are boosting this. So, and I personally don't often play the attack anyway, just because I like all the things the boost does. I enjoy playing neutral. I'm given the choice, as fun as mix-ups are, as much as I am a grappler player, I will probably prefer to play neutral over playing mix-ups.
Sure.
So,
But it's a good thing you're a grappler player then, D, because grapplers play neutral the whole game for the
yeah,
permission to play a mix
they
up.
play so much neutral, they have to.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
But yeah, so it is an attack. It is a considerably better boost. Like much like this card, like is a attack you can play at range 3. I won't stop you. You're still probably going to play the boost most of the time. This is a much more appealing boost, I think, even if it's often less impressive when used properly. Like used properly, your opponent will diffuse this. It
Right.
will not look like it did much. But like know that going in, and if the thing you need them to do is the thing that diffuses it, great. Like
Right.
that is
You
you doing
you
what you
put something down, you provoke a response. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier here with putting down a big threat and making them move.
Mhm. Yeah, like this
Okay.
will make them strike or it will make them move, and you can make use of those things. Um,
Right.
don't generally throw it out willy nilly. This is not a plus your armor plus your guard boost with no other text. The rest of the text does matter. So keep in mind all the stuff that I've said about how this is going to affect your opponent's decisions.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
there is one other use case in the unusual circumstance that you end up cornered. It's free. Play it.
Yeah, they can't cross over me.
Yep. You are not usually going to end up cornered.
Right.
It would be odd. All right. So yeah, we've got 2 good attacks. One situational, one like medium value, but it's consistent medium value. An attack we'll never play, an attack we probably will never play, an attack that you might play sometimes, but not all that often.
Right.
Um,
And even the ones that we've listed as being like potentially attacks, our evaluation was that they're both.
mhm.
So you have some interesting boosts. Like
Oh
you will
yeah,
probably. It's a good thing that if it's in your hand, you can boost them. You'll probably be boosting all of these cards fairly frequently.
I would say so. Yeah, I think
Okay. Okay.
this game's quite interesting. You might at this point be wondering, uh, where's the rest of my damage come from? I've got a 1 and a 3.
Yep.
There are 2 very obvious answers. Which one do you think it is? I'm pretty sure you know
Uh,
what I'm talking about.
I see 10 here, and that's a big number. But I'm also seeing normals that have some numbers that are bigger than 1 and 3.
Yep. Those are the 2 answers, by the way. And I would assess that the more true of them is normals. Your
Okay.
damage is coming from, you know, cards like this and cards like this.
Sure. I mean,
Um,
I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing 7, 6, 8. Um,
yeah, you are reading the
like
cards as they truly are, not as they appear.
right, yeah, and also they're for some reason they're all face down on top of my deck.
Yeah.
But looking at the cards in front of me, and seeing this side of them, I can see their power numbers, and they include +2 power.
Mhm.
Also, I'm noticing that none of these cost 4 gauge to play.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah,
We can hit for like 8 without spinning 4 gauge.
right,
A lot cheaper than. Well, I guess we have to spin 3 gauge to hit for 8. Well, we can hit for 7 without spinning 4 gauge.
right.
And 7's a good number. Um, yeah. All right. Well, I've divided these into sections for a reason.
Okay,
And I'm going to go through them because part of the reason I wanted to set up our attack boost force is because most characters don't really need to play it as normals because normals are always useful in one way or another.
right.
But let's look at your normals. Uh, so dive does not work at range 2.
Yep.
Does not really work at range 1, although there's there's use cases. If your opponent is somebody who likes to play as slow as at range 1, then you can dive and go to range 3, which is like okay. Um, tech is fine. However, your boost kit, as we've seen, is generally going to be pretty relevant. You're probably able to keep up with most people in a boost war, just not a very long one.
Okay,
It is, tech is tech where the opponent has tech bait. So for those not familiar, tech bait is the nickname for they've got that one boost, and when you see it hit the board, you're like, "Where's my tech?
right,
Where
right.
did I put it?"
Because I don't have anything else that can deal with this.
Yep. Um, by the way, you are one such character. Anyway, uh, well, I'm excited to talk about that one. But so
Okay.
keep tech if you need tech, or if you think you'll need tech. But very often, I'm perfectly fine to play this as force or to hold the attack for the zoner matchups where I go, I'm going to need to use dive for movement. I'll use dive for movement. It's not going to hit. It's fine. Uh,
Right.
so, uh, despite having 5 printed power, not all that much on this card. I'm mostly playing this as force in my view.
Okay.
We also are not exactly short of range 3 mid speeds if we want them, as we noticed earlier.
Right. Sure. We got this guy.
This terrible card does not hit at range 2 or 3. It only hits at range 1. Who thought of that? Weird. And imagine a card only hitting at 1 range.
That's crazy.
It's nonsense. It does do some useful stuff if you hit. The most useful property of Grasp, as in many cases, is that it's a speed 7 attack that hits at range 1, which means that your opponent knows that as long as it exists, they can't safely do something slower than that at range 1 without
Right.
guard. It is also nice that it might have 4 or 5 power. Those are nice, but again, not really impressive for breakpoints, just like when we took with Bang Bang Bang. Doesn't do anything amazing. So its value is in the positioning. Its value is in the mix-up. That you have a fast button is important.
Okay.
I will not usually strike with grasp. I don't represent it very often. You do have to do it sometimes.
To make sure people know you will.
Yes.
Right.
But if they start to run out of their grasps, I go, okay, cool. I don't need a speed 7 anymore. Now I can just play my speed 6s for the same reason, and then grasp becomes force or a boost.
Sure. Okay. And fierce is a good boost. It is relevant to all sorts of breakpoints.
It's a good boost. It is actually way less relevant for you than for most characters because you already have bonus power automatically. However, in basic mode, this does turn on a bunch of breakpoints because now you have a +3 power, and that
Sure.
makes everything a breakpoint. Like that means assault hits for 7 as printed, wild swing hits for 8. Like it's nonsense. In Exceed mode, this boost is just excessive, which means it's not a good idea, but I recommend it anyway. It's terribly fun.
Oh, absolutely. I
Um,
mean, there's a reason. There's another reason that the name of the show is Excess Exceed.
oh yes, it's glorious. All right, but yeah, so we actually have another very often force for me.
Okay.
Or yeah, I mean, again, represented sometimes, always and never are loaded words. But yeah, I'm not excited about grasp. Um, Cross is a great way to move back into range when your opponent played their cross as an attack. Um, uh, you like most of the characters in the game do not want to be at range 4 or 5 very much. So playing cross as an attack is positioning negative for you.
Sometimes you won't be able to help it because it'll be in your deck.
Yeah,
But
sometimes you won't be able to
you're
help it, but stuff in
right.
hands, you're probably not playing cross.
Sure. Okay.
Um, it's much like grasp. If your opponent has stuff that you need cross to beat, which everybody has sweep, but you don't actually need cross to beat sweep most of the time. You don't. But like play it if you have to, as little as you can get away with, because then you have to deal with being at the range that you put yourself at, and now you'll have to
Right.
pay some other cards to move back in because you
Right. And
probably don't have the cross.
I mean, we just got done talking about several ways that you have to diffuse zonery situations. You have zap. You have this boost, but you kind of want to use those things when your opponent makes you, not when you've made you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If you play cross as an attack against a zoner, then you will need twice as many of these diffusal tools as you own, because you
Right.
need some of them to deal with your mistake and some of them to deal with your opponent doing the thing that they're trying to do
The
anyway.
thing that they're going to do, of course. Okay.
Yep.
So this is going to be run as many times as we need it to be run.
Yep. Almost all the times. It's also even against non-zoners, right? So like to take the other extreme, a grappler who is going to be getting in your face. Well, you're happy to step back from range 1 to range 2 if they're a range 1 grappler, as most grapplers are.
Mhm.
And if they corner you, you can now go out of the corner and go to range 2 with cross because you can advance 2 spaces with it. And that's great. Or with
Right.
run, excuse me, with run. So
Right.
like
Right.
even in those matchups, still perfectly useful. But yeah, so almost always a boost. Um, there's very little reason to play to use this as force if you have other choices because the whole reason you play this boost is for the force efficiency.
It's force efficient anyway. You wait a turn, you'll need to move for some other reason. Now you've gotten more force by boosting it.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Spike. My Achilles heel. Um, which is strange because this character does not lose to spike very much, from what we can
Right.
tell. Anyway, so it's a mid speed. It hits at 2 and 3. It hits the ranges that we like the most, right? Our favorite ranges 2, 1 and 3 are somewhere in the middle, but generally you'll prefer 1 a little better. But like 3 is fine too. It depends on your deck composition. That's one of the things that is interesting, right? Is keeping up with that.
Right. Right.
But
Sure.
anyway, it's mid speed. It's lower than your other mid speed. Your other comparable range mid speed over here.
Right.
That also beats all the same things except for block. But so looking at playing this from hand, it is you think they'll block, or you don't have this and you need speed, a focus, or a sweep. So it's part of your mix-up. Play it when you need to. I am way
Sure.
more excited to play defense,
Okay.
because defend now says I have +1 armor, +3 guard, and +1 power, or I have +1 armor, +5 guard, and +2 power. Right? It means that my wild swing with bonus power is probably unstunnable by you.
Yeah, I mean, we
Um,
we had that little interlude earlier about how we were like, yeah, +3 guard isn't really, it's nice, but it's not really that relevant. +5 guard is actually pretty good.
yeah, well, so +4 is good, which is why this works on
Right.
front side. Um, +7 effective
Oh,
is
sure.
stupid.
Right. Yeah.
the
That
total
you've
the
turned
total
every
here
card into you've
is
turned
1
every
armor,
card into
6 guard.
focus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's ridiculous.
Right.
Um, and that goes beyond relevant to it's enough. Um, like if your opponent doesn't have ignore guard, it's enough. They're not getting through it.
No
Um,
way. Yeah.
so I love defense, basic and exceed mode because it just means that my ability, like for the same reason I love the boosts that make my attacks a little bit more reliable. Where I'm like, yeah, I need consistency. My reward, I've got reward
Right. And
check, but I need
none of these
consistency.
cards have printed guard on them. Many of them you're going to be playing at ranges where they're not perfectly consistent because you're not going to know what is coming.
Hmm.
Having something to up consistency is kind of everything you want, it sounds like.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is usually a boost for me. It is usually a boost at range 1 because that's where my stuff is the most vulnerable. And if I'm at range 2, I'm just going to wild swing anyway. Like I
Right.
don't need. I'm not, or I'm boosting something more exciting than that. I'm not boosting that at range 2.
Sure.
Um, it is also unsurprisingly a discount for you're not citizen against zoners, where you're like, well, I don't have this, and they're going to shoot me with a projectile, and I need to get in. I guess I'll boost this.
Right.
Um,
Against many projectiles, defend dive or defend assault is just fine.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
maybe
progress.
it's
It's
not
not.
it's not it's not quite as overwhelming as Fear Not Citizen, but it's good enough.
Yeah, it'll get you.
Okay.
It'll get you in the right direction.
Okay.
Um, all right. Uh, okay. The trio of exciting cards. Where assaults has 5 or 6 power. Well, okay, we're playing from hands. We're playing from hands. What assault actually has is advantage in range 1.
Yes.
Um, and I like that. Range 1 is not my favorite range, but it's a playable range. And if I'm choosing to play assault, hopefully it means I have a range 1 follow up. Which, by the way, this is probably counterintuitive. If I have a handful of things that don't work at range 1, that's the perfect time to play assault.
Sure. You
Because
start wild swinging.
yeah, because the stuff in my deck works at range 1, or is at least much likelier to. Right?
Sure.
Like
You see your if your hand is this, and this, you're like, great. Let's go to range one and start swinging.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, and dive, not grasp.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Grasp is still fine because I want this as a defensive option more than an offensive option, even if I have to represent it
Okay.
offensively sometimes. But yeah, it's
Right.
like, yeah, it's your hand is like, okay, I guess my deck is better at range 1 than my hand right now. So cool, let's go. And then when they leave, you now have a hand that is more functional, right?
Sure. Yeah. They got
That's
out
the
of
whole
range
idea.
one, and you have a whole handful of things that hit.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, so assaults is great. I'm addicted to EX assaults. That's just me though. There's no particular reason you should care because you can't EX your wild swings. Um,
True.
yeah, range 1 advantage is nice. So yeah, absolutely play this, right? Like your opponent at range 3 still has to contend with you mixing up between your mid speeds and assaults. And you have a pretty nasty mid speed in the form of Slam Evil in that it is speed 4, so they can't just play dive.
Right.
Um, but yeah. Uh, by the way, this does mean people are slightly more inclined to block. And my opinion is that your assault does beat block. Um, whether block beats assault or the other way around is a running joke / ongoing contention. But I think most of the time you are happier to have range 1 advantage than for them to not have gauge.
Sure. Sure. Okay. You can, and as you said before when we were talking about block, maybe that means that they won't block your payout now, your big payout.
Yeah, exactly. One fewer block.
Okay. Okay.
And that's good. All right. So yeah, assault's usable for all the reasons assault's normally usable.
I
Sweep.
assume you're never going to use backstep.
Oh yeah, there's like a bottom half of this card. Right, I forgot. Hmm. Anyway, this is an attack. You can spin it as force. That's fine too.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't really fathom. Okay, when I'll play backstep is when I wanted to pay one force to retreat in a more stylish way.
Right, and one copy of assault was already down, so you can't hold it for
Yeah, I
the
can't
EX.
hold the EX. And I'm like, all right, I wanted
Right.
to go from range 1 to range 2. Backstep, cool.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, assaults or force. You're not boosting this. There's like even against characters who like range 1, you are good enough at range 1 that you can still swing at range 1 long enough that you are not backing out to range 4 or greater. Like stay within your favorite ranges, you'll be fine.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Sweep. It's sweep. It's a good card. Play it at will from at range 1 in particular. This is a card that you're kind of sad to see in your hand because it's so good in your deck. Because it's very consistent and 7 is a lovely number. I like 7.
Yep.
Power, to be clear. But yeah, so it's also, also lights turns your mid speeds into scarier threats. But at range 2, I would probably just prefer to initiate with a wild swing. And at range 3, I still might prefer to just initiate depending on what my hand looks like. But it is sweep. It's a fantastic card, and it is light. It is a fantastic boost. So you will find times to play both sides of this almost without fail. Like,
Sure.
But playing it as an attack at range 1 in particular, playing it as a boost at range 3 in particular are the most common cases here. This is not force. Don't mistake this for a card that you spin as force.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that. Will almost always be a higher value. I'm gonna say it will always be a higher value to use it in one of the other two ways.
It's pretty tough to spend sweep as force for almost any character.
Yeah, like the case where you're spinning that as force is when you had to pay, is when you have 3 cards in hands. One is sweep, one is the card that wins the game, and the other one is your 1 force boost that you needed to make the card win the game. So I guess this.
Right.
Like that's I guess how that happened. All right. Anyway, sweep is awesome. I don't need to go on it at length. You're not sweep the character, so I'll let the sweep the character session be another time to talk about why sweep is awesome.
Sounds good.
Focus. Another card you can kind of play at will, right? It's got some mitigation armor, so that even if you don't hit back, as long as you're not stunned, you get to draw your card. Like I said exciting because I'm excited to see these on your deck, but they're also good to play in hand anytime you want, which means that it's nice that you have like a safety tool. You can go, okay, yeah, playing from hand is fine. All right. I can't think of anything else to say about focus. Honestly, it's just it works. Reading.
I feel like focus speaks for itself.
Yeah, like and reading is good, but it's a case where you're probably not spending much time, like unless you have parried and you have information. You are more concerned about being in a position that makes your deck awesome so that you will win most possible interactions than about trying to force a particular interaction. And you also usually do not care what's in your opponent's hand because you are not playing a specific thing to diffuse a specific thing. You are playing a stack of probabilities that favor you.
Right. Okay.
So, like reading, I probably use reading less on Skullman than on most characters I play. Like I would rather be striking. I'd rather be doing something that, like, sorry, I'd rather be striking with a different thing, like in a more interesting way. If I could reading, but I could instead. Well, we'll come back to that. Sorry, haven't gotten to the ultras yet.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Saving the best for last.
Yeah, they've been hanging out of here taunting me this whole time.
Yep. All right. And lastly, we already talked about it. Block is gauge.
Sure.
You're allowed to play parry if you think it's a good idea. I leave that to you because parry is a very interesting boost, and I like it a lot.
Yep.
Well, not okay. I'll at least interesting. Very interesting might be going too far, but it's interesting. Anyway. All right. So, you are a Red Horizon character. A trend that exists in Red Horizon, not unilaterally true, but very often true, is that you have what I like to call big dumb ultras.
The big
Um,
dumb ultras.
the big dumb
Okay.
ultra. It's the season mechanic of season 1, as it were.
Yes, it is.
You pay a bunch of gauge, and you have some sort of horrific, awesome effects at your favorite range, where
Right.
your opponent counts your gauge, looks at your reference card, and goes,
I'm dead.
"Huh, yeah." Like, well, typically, if it's their turn, they go, "I'm moving."
Yeah,
Like,
sure. Yeah, I'm gonna
I'm
not.
not standing here.
So the kind of one of the big pieces of wisdom about Exceed that comes up fairly frequently in many aspects of the game is that you are playing to your worst case. You are, well, okay. If I have to guess a mix up here, I'm going to guess the one that is scarier for me, and I'll we'll figure it out if it's not the scariest one for me. If you have a big dumb ultra, congratulations, your opponent has found the scariest thing.
Yeah. And very often, the way these are set up is that, like, you are converting one form of value into another. You manage to build up gauge, you are now converting it into damage, and your opponent probably can't stop it.
Right.
Um, they're often on or above curve. Here we have no exception. It is exemplary. It is 4 gauge, actually more expensive than some of the big num ultras. 1 of 2, 10, 6. As I said before, we could just stop reading there. It works at range 2, which we know is our favorite range. It's on curve
Right.
at range 2, and it does 10 damage.
Yep, that's good
Um,
enough.
that's plenty good. The before effect on here does mean that this can occasionally steal the game out from under your opponent at range 3 or 4. Um, that is if you had 4 gauge and managed to wild swing it. So it's not a use case I consider common.
Sure.
Um, it is a nice bonus. That means that your opponent it needs to be more careful than usual striking into you, even at range 3 or 4, if you have 4 gauge.
Right.
Um,
Right. Okay.
like, I guess we could view it as the weirdest and strongest anti-projectile tool you own in that regard, but it's mostly not for that. This is mostly an attack you're going to play from hands. It is also maybe my favorite attack to EX in this deck, because speed 7 is even more uncontestable than speed 6. You can even play it at range 1. Um, also, it's 1 louder.
That's true. Yeah, no. If you play it as an EX, it has an extra exclamation mark at the end.
There you go. Yep.
Yep.
That's how that works. So, as the flavor text on the card suggests, you should save this for when you know it will work.
Yep.
This is a valuable card, a valuable attack, an insanely high damage attack. It's great. You do have the decision of I'm going to build up 4 and swing for this, or I'm going to exceed it and then probably kill them before I get 4 gauge again. That's fine. Both those are legitimate.
Right.
If you are not in reach of 3 or 4 gauge, you may well find that you're paying this as force just to move around, just to play neutral. That's fine.
Okay.
This can be force. Um, the boost on this, one of the strongest boosts in the game.
Yeah.
Burning Justice.
This is quite a boost, D.
Oh, it is. So when I played this boost, I pronounced the title of the boost "I'm Invincible" because that's how that reads to
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Um, and you more or less are. Ignoring the damage means that you are functionally stun immune. You do not
Yep.
take the damage. You cannot be stunned. Like, yeah, you are just gonna do your thing. And you can't be killed. These are all very nice things to have. Um, there are 2 times. Oh, sorry. There's one time at which this boost is unambiguously at its strongest. Um, I have a feeling you can guess this one because I think you've been over some lessons that would give it away.
Is it when you're gonna die?
Good guess, but actually no. It's when you're about to reshuffle.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're happy. You thank your opponent for doing a change cards action for you.
Of sorts. So, yeah. So discarding twice as many cards from the top of your deck will not force a reshuffle.
Oh.
That's what
Okay.
I'm getting at. Um, you get 5 cards in deck. You boost this. Your opponent strikes and you get and hits you for 8, and you go, cool. I mill 16, so you discard 4 cards from the
You
top
just
of your
got
deck.
4 cards, and that's it.
That's
Interesting.
it. That's all that happens. And then the strike goes on, right? So, like, this is at its strongest when you have generally like 6 or fewer cards left in your deck, um, before your reshuffle. After
Right.
your reshuffle, it is the okay, next strike's the last one, or
Yep.
rather, like, it means that you are committing to your hand is all you have for the rest of the game because you're going to mill your entire deck during the next strike. Probably. Like
Sure.
the
Sure.
number of cards you might not mill your entire deck, but sorry, mill meaning discard, but you should assume that you will when you're boosting this. You should assume that your deck is gone in the next strike whenever you boost this,
Right.
because you eat a sweep. That's 12 cards. That's a lot.
That's a ridiculous amount of cards. Yeah. So, I
Yep.
mean, so either it's going to be at the end of your deck, the first shuffle of your deck, or at the end of the game, because
Yep.
the game has to be over or else you're going to run out of cards.
Yep. Which that second case does tend to correlate with you are about to die, right? When your life
Yep.
is when your opponent is threatening lethal, because your life is in most circumstances like 6 or less. In many matchups, it's actually going to be a little higher than that. In some, it's going to be a lot higher than that. But character specific stuff. Look at how much damage your opponent can do in one turn, and go, okay, now they can kill me. And if they can kill you, consider boosting this. But if you are post reshuffle, be wary. Because
Right.
what you don't want is for them to waste this during one strike and then kill you next turn.
Right.
Like they gain advantage and aren't dead. Now they kill you. Now they hit for lethal. So you
Right.
want to play against the things that would force that state on you. Like
Can
that's
can
sneaky.
the can discarding from the top of your deck on your second reshuffle end the game?
No,
Okay.
you must draw a wild swing.
The 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 specific wording on how losing the game by running out of cards works does not interact with this at all.
Yeah, it's the same rule for how your deck normally runs out and forces a reshuffle. When you would draw or wild swing from an empty deck,
Got
you
it.
use your reshuffle automatically if you have one, and if you have already used one, you lose the game.
You lose a game. Got it. Okay. This doesn't do either of those. Okay. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So this is you will probably need to pay this as force sometimes, because sometimes you need force. You're contesting neutral, like that happens. You might need to change cards just to have a suite of tools that you don't have available to you, or to see more of your deck or whatever.
Right.
If you're going to play this attack, play it. If you're not, that's fine too. You'll find a chance to play this boost where it says I'm stun immune, or a chance to play this boost where it says I'm actually not about to die. You are,
I'm
or
death
some of
immune.
both. Yeah, like I'm death immune. I'm invincible. You just can't do anything to
Okay.
me.
Okay.
But if you're post shuffle, know that you are committing to a lot by doing that. If you're pre reshuffle, yeah, just do it. This is your tech bait.
Yep. Yeah, it would be. That makes sense.
Yep. Like I alluded to that earlier, like you are a character with tech bait. This is that one boost that if your opponent doesn't have tech, they're looking for it. If they do have it, they use it, because you have just made yourself invincible. They're going to do that.
All right.
Notably, that
Does
means
this?
you usually get to use your other cool boosts without worrying about tech.
Oh,
So
sure.
that's
Yeah.
nice.
I mean, this would be tech boost in any other context.
Yeah, like that wouldn't be your tech bait, but you have this.
Yeah, tech bait. I'm sorry. Does the presence of this boost in your kit mean that, I don't know, when you are nearing the end of your deck, should your opponent be worried about like boosting power? I'm sorry, the end of your first deck, should they be worried because you could just put this down and negate their power bonus or something?
If they don't also have tech, yes. Like
Okay.
this is a thing that you can do in a boost war that specifically diffuses like power.
Right.
It can also diffuse speed, because it is also stunning immunity, right? Like it can. This is a decisive way to end a boost war if your opponent doesn't have a tech available to answer it.
Right. Okay.
Uh, so yes, they should be thinking about that, but by default, they will have a tech available for it.
Right.
Um,
Gotcha. Okay.
yep. By the way, the importance of that might mean that you will go, okay, I'm going to reading dive before I play this boost, and
Right.
but I don't love my success rate on that. I find sufficiently often I would get more value out of just playing the focus, and then if I boost this and they tech it, I will play a different boost that they can't tech, and that's fine. Like I
Right.
have
You
enough
got
good
this.
stuff that I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. You're doing okay. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. So attack, boost, and force. This is a high value card in every way. It's awesome.
Yep.
KAPLOW.
You'll use it any way you can use it.
Yep. Zing, zing, zing. All right, 2 gauge, contrasting with 4, quite a bit cheaper. Or is it? If you reveal this with Wild Swing, you don't pay its gauge cost. So if this is a Wild Swing, notably, you may still choose to invalidate it because you still Wild Swing an Ultra. That is a rule
Okay.
and exceed.
That doesn't change.
Yep. So if you Wild Swing an Ultra, then on reveal, after both players have revealed, you decide if you're validating. If you can't, then you're not deciding. You just invalidate. If you
Right.
can, you make a choice. This one, if you Wild Swing, you always can, so you make a choice. If you're at range 2 or 3, then sorry, if you're not at range 1, invalidate it. Obviously, it doesn't hit. If you are at range 1, you get to look at your opponent's attack and say, okay, do I lose to that? And if you don't lose to it, validate it. By the way, it's probably obvious, but this attack is not 7 power most of the time. This is 8 or 9.
This is 8 or 9, sure, yeah. As though 7 wasn't enough.
Yeah, well, it wasn't, right? Because there are things like 7 doesn't stun focus. So now I have 185, which means if my opponent didn't outspeed it, they lose.
They lost. Yep.
The move 1 or 2 is also occasionally useful, where you are going to put them at range 2 now, sometimes into the not often, but sometimes into the corner.
Right.
That said, fairly often, if you're striking at range 1, they are defending with the most reliable thing they have. They're probably playing focus. They might even be playing block. So it is often relevant that this just breaks focus, and then repositions block. It will not reposition focus, notably. Oh well. Sure. They had to get something on their focus.
Right, sure. I assume then when we're talking about it, because we're talking about it as though it has its stat boosts, that means that you are probably unlikely to play it from hand.
One sec. I will not play that from hands. I will play that from hands.
Oh, yeah, okay.
186 is pretty solid. It only loses 2 grasp in most cases. And 2 gauge is affordable. Like, the wild swing is great, but I'm not going to rely on the wild swing. Range 1 is not where I'm hanging out most of the time if I can help it.
Right.
If I have this card in hand as an attack, I'm not going to play the 175. I'm committing 2 gauge and this card, which is force, and that's like still kind of high risk. I would rather just be wild swinging. Also the boost, which we'll come to in a second. But if I have 2 copies in hand, then I will be considering this. And the reason I might
I was gonna say just to make it explicit, because this is kind of odd if people are watching the video. D does not mean that he would play a retemplated version of this card.
Oh, sorry, I did pull out a retemplated version, didn't I?
Yeah, he means the EX attack for people who are like listening.
I'm sorry. Yes, to be clear,
I totally get you.
Yes, I would play EX zing zing zing. Zing I'm running out of zings.
Yeah, that's a tough one to say.
Zing zing zing. EX zing zing zing. There we go. Thinking about EX zing 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 zing.
Yeah, that's tough.
All right.
You could never be a like a phoneme based superhero, D.
No, I could not. I would trip over my own superpowers.
Yep.
As I did earlier today. Anyway, so the reason that I will tend to end up with 2 of this in hand, by the way, is because I might be saving it for this boost.
Okay.
This boost, perhaps more than anything we've talked about, and we talked about a few things, establishes that range 2 is where I win.
Yeah.
I'm at range 2. Cool. Boost this. Strike. In order for them to hit me, they need to move. And if I am playing something that is speed 5 or faster, they probably don't have that choice.
Right.
Like their best hope is probably to play cross and just leave and hope that I didn't play a speed 6.
Right, and just no power. And you do have speed 6s. Like that's a mix up that they have to deal with.
Yep. This is probably your scariest possible second boost if you manage to get one and your opponent doesn't contest. They will usually contest, so don't assume that. It is also another very good, like, this is the boost you play when your opponent has established a setup when they have boosts in play that you can't deal with. Now you're dealing with them. Because if you went to range 2 and they played a boost, okay, now you need to deal with that. This deals with a lot of things.
This deals with a whole lot of boosts. Yeah, short of like before movement on a strike or something, you don't care about speed most of the time. You don't care about power most of the time. They're just not going to hit you.
Yeah, you boost this and you play sweeper focus and you say, all right, you can't spike me. You can leave with cross, I guess. If you want to hit me, you're probably coming in. So let's trade in my favor.
Right. So odds are when you are boosting this, you have a card in hand that you're hoping to confirm rather than wild swinging.
I've done it both ways. It depends on whether it depends on how dramatic the threat is that I need to diffuse.
Sure.
But the thing in hand that I'm confirming is almost certainly going to be the sweep of the focus. Because that's like, this is the, hey, I don't lose to spike. You probably don't have other mid speeds that work in this positioning. And if that's true, I'll play this and it will work. But if I'm getting rid of my opponent's setup and I don't have these things, then I'm just going to wild swing. because I'm getting rid of their setup. We're at my favorite range. It's hard for them to deal with anyway.
Right.
I don't need a the specific thing that I need to set up is kind of like 2/3 of my deck probably. So, and this is good enough to do that work by itself. It's also costs the amount you would expect. It is a 1/4 soldier boost. It's not trivial. Mhm.
And as you were saying earlier about the possibility of playing EX Zing Zing Zing, um, this is the kind of thing that you are saving over the course of the whole game to deploy at the crucial moment. So you might be saving it so long you would get 2 copies of it in your hand.
Yeah, like this is such an impactful boost that you are likely to be saving it for that purpose, and that's why you might end up with the extract. That's exactly
Right.
right.
Honestly, it's very much like Burning Justice in that way, where it's not an all the time boost. It's something that you are looking to deploy at the right moment.
That's correct. Although
Okay.
with Burning Justice,
Okay.
it's way more predictable. Like Burning Justice, it's like okay, bottom of my first deck or end of game when I'm at low life and low second deck.
Right.
Um, this one, it's much more about what is my opponent doing that I need to stop, that I need to diffuse, that I
Sure.
need to turn off.
Sure. And that means that you could be waiting for a long time
Yep.
to deploy it. Okay.
Yep. But yeah, so that means generally speaking, looking at my hands, I'm thinking of this as a boost. I don't play it
Right.
willy nilly, but I'm holding it because it is a boost.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
like anything else, sometimes I need force. Well, like anything else except cross, sometimes I need force. Um, and the attack, I'm mostly not considering playing. I will still play EX
Right.
because I find 186 pretty exciting, but um, it is for most purposes a boost and a pretty strong one.
Sure. Okay. So now that we've gone through the kit, and it seems like the game plan writ large is get to range 2, play strong boosts and wild swing a lot.
hmm
Uh, is that pretty much like the TLDR of this lesson? Is it you are trying to establish your favorite range, you are trying to do some strong filler offense with your wild swings, and you are just boosting when the boosts are good.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to. Wow, we should have done this lesson in like 10 minutes.
I know, seriously.
Yep.
Well, again, though, it's excess succeed for a reason. We have
Yeah,
to be exhaustive.
yeah.
Um,
And
so
let me make a point, which is as I said, what I said earlier was the interesting part of Skullman for me. Like the really the interesting part is figuring out how to deal with the weaknesses, because I think this whole time I've been talking about mostly what makes these things strong in various situations, and especially with these special boosts, like
yeah,
how cool these are.
yeah.
But Skullman's not overpowered. In fact, he for a while had a reputation as being weak. I think that changed late in season one's heyday, as it were.
Right.
But he was never, so-called top tier. Although I don't put a lot of stock in tier lists.
Sure.
Um, so uh, I'll let you finish because I interrupted you. But the thing I want to come back to is the question is why? Like, what makes this character not insane, given all the things that I've said that are good about him?
Yeah. So I think we're actually kind of moving to a similar point, because the question that I was going to ask is basically like, obviously, or at least it sounds like to me from what you've told me so far, if I am at range 2, I am comfortable wild swinging. I am comfortable running my offense. My opponent is clearly not going to be compliant with my plan.
Mhm.
So, and I know we talk about like counterplay at the end of the lesson and things like that, but if I'm at range 1, if I'm at range 3, if I have sort of a you know how am I evaluating the not best case scenarios for myself? How am I evaluating, like, when do I wild swing at range 1? What is like what is my heuristic for when that is safe?
Yep. All right. So the bad news is I'm not. I can't give you a strong heuristic because my answer is count all the cards.
Yep. Okay.
Like my it's not shorthand. It's not a shortcut. It's just determine exactly what's left in your deck, and then consider what your odds are, and then evaluate your best and your worst cases based on that. Right?
Right.
Like I do a lot of math when I play Skullman.
Sure.
It is I need to because anytime I'm striking, not anytime, but most of the time that I'm striking from a stack of probabilities, and I need to know what they are because I don't want to strike and then go, oh, actually, like 50% of my deck won, 50% of it lost, but the half that lost really badly, and most of the
Right.
half that won didn't do all that much. Like
So
it's not
so
great.
it's not even a win loss binary that you're considering. You're considering how badly a card loses,
Mhm.
um, versus how well it wins, in addition to the probability of it even landing.
Exactly. And
Okay.
this is why it's complicated. This is also why you like boosts, because they will tend to tilt things in your favor, right?
Okay.
If you're invincible, then your loss case is not all that bad anymore. If you have +2 power, +1 speed, then your win cases are way, way, way better.
Right.
If you have defends, then it's harder to attain your loss cases, right? You're more likely to trade.
And if you have a bunch of cards that don't land at your that don't hit at your current range in your hand, you are more likely to be able to wild swing.
Right. Like once your
Okay.
hand and discard engage, and I guess also the board, in boost area, have stuff that doesn't work in large concentrations, then you know that your deck is more favorable to you. But I still recommend actually counting. If you want the
Right.
heuristic, then yeah, it's if your hand is garbage, then your deck is better, and vice
Then
versa.
your deck's amazing. Sure. Okay.
If your hand is good, play from your hands because your deck is probably not as good.
Right. Okay. So that was my question. It sounds like you were also wanting to talk about how to play around his weaknesses.
Mhm.
So please,
Yeah, which this is
I'd
also
love to
kind
know.
of the counterplay section, because
Right.
what his the opponents are going to be exploiting your weaknesses, kind of automatically, because they're going to be looking at the serious if you do, trying to deal with it, and then that inherently capitalizes on your weaknesses.
Right.
This is a thing. This is a problem with Skullman. I say a problem. It is a weakness. It's a drawback. That they go, okay, well, I want to not be at range 2, which means that now you have to commit resources to moving back to range 2, probably. But also, anytime that you're striking at range 1 or range 3, you're narrowing the what's left for you at that range, because you are more situational at 1 and 3. 2 is
Right.
specifically where you have the most tools, and that's significant. Also, no printed guard, and not a very important guard breakpoint, means that opponents will very often be inclined to defend on curve, and it will often work. At
Okay.
range 3 in particular, if they defend at speed 5, your spike loses, your slam evil loses, your splam loses. Like, you have your assault and this extra assault. If those aren't in your deck, then you're not all that likely to win from deck. You do also have zap. That is nice. However, you probably used it earlier because of what zap does.
Right.
Uh, so what this means is that you typically want to be maintaining, you want to, what you would prefer, right, is to have in your deck um, sweeps, assaults, uh, things that are on curve or things that are very below curve, not the mid speeds as much. Your opponent is
Okay.
going to be able to play around your mid speeds very consistently if they want to, and they will often be inclined to.
Just by initiating on curve all the time.
Yeah, just by defending on curve,
I'm
or
sorry.
or
Yeah.
or initiating
Yes.
on curve.
Defending
Yeah.
on curve. Yes.
Um, yeah, they will stand to initiate a decent amount of the time. However, they will often be inclined to set up on their turn and then make it more awkward for you to initiate.
Right.
Your main answer to that is your boost kit, as we talked about. Like this boost and this boost are all pretty good ways to say, I see that you were setting up. I'm mostly just ignoring it by saying I have +3 and +3 guard, invincible, you can't hit me, that kind of thing.
Right.
Being able to take one step and strike is also often a diffusal tool. It is a threat, but you'll often need to use it as a diffusal tool because you're sufficiently positioning sensitive that that's an issue.
Right.
Um, but yeah, your weakness of your range is not that consistent is what is part of your identity as a reward wild singer. You have a 3 to 5, a 1 to 2. I'm gonna call this a 2 to 3 because it might as well be.
Sure.
Another 2 to 3. And then the normals are not exactly one range either.
Right. They're all over
So
the place.
yeah, so like 2 looks good. 3 and 1 get considerably more awkward, and you will often find yourself you will a statistically significant amount of the time find that you are wild swinging stuff that just doesn't work, and then losing a significant amount of value by doing that.
Right.
Um, because any strike you lose, you're probably also losing some amount of positioning because your opponent was doing something to get away with it. On curve stuff tends to also involve movements. Um, so as they defend against your mid speeds, they will tend to move out of the range that you wanted them in anyway, which means now you have to recover that, but also you lost the strike. Now they have a turn to
Right.
capitalize. You're down more than it
You're
looked like you were down.
you're down gauge too. You've lost it all on that strike. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you are at your favorite range, when you do have a compliant opponent, you have a training dummy opponent, or when
Mhm.
your opponent's low on resources, something they've set at range 2, and you're ready to go. Do you just wild swing? Is it just is it that automatic when things are going your way, or is it more like, do I have anything better to do with my hand? Okay, I don't wild swing. Um,
So I mentioned resource sensitivity earlier. There are times that you'll need to change cards, and it is viable to do that when you're advantaged as opposed to when you're not. Right. So
Sure.
so when we talk about neutral and exceed, right? When you're advantaged, you can capitalize by like winning strikes. That's a good way to capitalize. You can also
Right.
capitalize by obtaining a resource advantage by spending turns preparing or changing cards. Changing cards being more turn efficient, but obviously costing other resources.
Right.
So when you are advantaged, when you are at your favorite range, like it is up to you, but that is mostly a matter of look at your hands and think about what happens next. If you wild swing and you win or lose this strike, you want to know that you can do something afterward.
Right.
Because by default, your opponent's going to have the next turn, and they're going to put themselves in a position where now they are advantaged. And that might mean that you lost this strike, and also you will lose the next one because they have secured a specific advantage.
Right.
This can make it feel kind of intimidating. It can make you feel like you want to do one of these on like every strike because that you're like, okay, well, if I dodge at range 2 anytime I initiate, or if I always have some iron guard, or if I always have some extra speed, it's gonna feel like everything works a little better. Um, that's hard to sustain. Just number of cards wise, like that's
It means that you'll have to take the change cards of the prepare action more often because you are throwing more force at a problem.
yep. And those actions are costly.
Right.
Like if you and your opponent are both preparing, by default, they're doing better than you. Like you are generally, I would say, a rushdown character. You have some grappler tendencies, but I consider you a rushdown character.
Okay.
You're limited in how well you can set up. You want to be rushing them. You want to kill them before they have all the tools they need to prevent you from killing them. So
Right.
that's rushdown.
So
Um,
so it's a little bit more complicated than just get to range 2 and wild swing over and over again. There's actually like there are going to be times when I'm at my favorite range and I don't want to capitalize right then because I need an economic advantage instead.
yeah. Well, yes. Although again, I would frame that as you are capitalizing. You're converting it into value, but the value you're converting
Into
it
that,
into
right.
isn't a life difference. It's a
Right.
resource difference.
It's more boosts that I can play later.
Yeah,
It's
it's
it's something
options.
that I right. Okay. Okay.
This is the difference between okay. This may not be the most useful analogy. My first thing that came to my mind was Tsubaki from Blaze Blue. I don't remember uh how much context you have for this, but in many fighting games, if you knock the opponent down, that's good for you. They're on the ground.
Oh, I think I know where you're going. Sorry,
You know,
continue.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you know about Oki.
you can charge your thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So in many fighting games, you knock the opponent down, and now you have an opportunity as they are getting up to throw an attack that they have to deal with. So if you have the ability to enforce a mix up where you're threatening multiple different things and they have to guess right on their way up, where like their options are just worse than yours by default because they are getting up, they don't have very many choices. That's okizeme, right? That's wake up mix up. It, if you instead say, nah, you can get up, you're fine. I'm going to do something
Right.
else. Because you have something else to do. Where you're and I gave my example is Tsubaki from Central Fiction, well from Blaze Blue, because she's like, okay, I knocked you down instead of trying to continue to win combat by standing over you and continuing to attack you. I'm going to sit back and charge my meter because she has a unique meter that she charges.
Right.
Right. Um, that's the framing that's the analogy I'd prefer when you're looking at I'm in a great position and I chose to change cards. Right? It's not that you've thrown away your advantage. You are in fact spending it. It's that you're not spending it to win combat. You're
Sure.
spending
Okay.
it so that you have options to sustain you through the rest of the game. Because if you win combat once or twice, unless you're winning the combat at the end of the game, like with this card, you have to worry about the rest of the game after that.
Right.
And the thing that you can't do, right? The thing that Skullman is really not built to do, is to like throw all his hand away, winning strikes, and then the opponent goes out to range 4, and then he can keep wild singing. Right? If the opponent goes to range, you have to follow them. You are not
Right.
functional. Um, and if you have literally nothing in hands, and you're even at range 1 and 3, it's a little dicey. Like depending on what distribution of normals is left in your deck, in particular, range 1 is where your opponent can probably just hit you a bunch, and you might not be able to do anything.
Right.
Like
Right.
you want that not to be the case. You want to have tools.
Right. And the upside to all this, that was a great analogy, by the way, D, about
Thank you.
Subaki. Thank you for putting it more usefully than I did, which was You can charge your thing.
That is exactly what I was getting at. It's just I need to
Right,
put more
no.
words to it because I can't.
Yeah,
I don't want to assume anybody's
you did
context.
you did say it better than me. But so the upside to all of this for Skullman, the advantage that he has is that it doesn't take that many strikes to kill the opponent.
Right.
So all of this work you're doing, you only have to get you do have some grappler tendencies. You get to the range you want, and then they die. Or they don't die, but they escape by the skin of their teeth, and you get there again, and they die next turn or something.
Yeah, like
But you will
that
be
pattern is
spending a lot
visible.
of time getting there.
Yeah, the pattern is visible, and the it's a little mitigated in term. Like the reason I don't think he's really a grappler is because there's a weird bit of mitigation there, where because you aren't typically striking from hands, you're spending a little less as you are striking on offense and on defense, and your options are a little better on offense and on defense, which means that you have a little bit more resource edge to do those things. And like you're not just enforcing mix up from hands. You are like spending less resources than your opponent overall on most strikes, which means that you get to keep up with them a little better. But yeah,
Wild swings are like a rebate. They're a cheaper way to run offense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Indeed,
cool.
and I use them that way on other characters and on grapplers, as you know.
Right.
But yeah, so he has some of that tendency in that he is very good at his favorite range, very awkward at other ranges. But even at his favorite range, he does occasionally have misses, which is why you've got to pay attention to your resources. Like rare is the game. It could happen, but rare is the game where your opponent did whatever they wanted to do, you wild swing every turn, and you still won every strike. Like that. Just do not assume that will happen.
Right. Yeah, that's not the kind of consistency that you can buy.
Right. You are not built that way.
Right.
You will win maybe one of the three, and you won't win it like a grappler. You won't win 3 strikes in one. You'll probably win 1.5 or 2 strikes in one most of the time that you are winning that hard.
Right. Okay. But that can be enough. I mean,
That can still be enough.
If you are trading evenly every other time and you win decisively a couple of times, you're still doing okay.
Yeah. And leveraging that value is what you want to look at your exceed mode to do, right? If this appeals to you, you're like, okay, well, I want the more grappler side of things. Your exceed mode is doing more of that. It's doing that very well. It's saying I'm going to get that value and that power. Then the other option is build to KAPLOW and say at some point I'm going to throw. I guess this is also you could do this as a command grab if you wanted to. 4 gauge, 10 power, speed 6. I think that roughly exists. I mean I know it exists, but the one I'm thinking of is range 1. Anyway, but yeah, so like you can say I'm going to build for this and kill you with it, but you still have to get them below, 210 or below for it to actually end the game.
Right. Were you thinking of Tager by any chance?
Yeah, of course.
Yes. All right. I've learned something.
Yeah, like 110-6. Yeah, Genesis Emerald Tager Buster. Absolutely.
That's pretty Tager like. Okay. Yeah. So that's the kit. We've talked a little bit about counterplay. We've talked about some strategy stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap up the lesson and maybe talk about like similar characters?
Let's see. So, I'll specify this. I don't know if it's obvious. There's a limit to how loud you should be when you shout his card names. Which you will be doing.
Check like if you live in an apartment, maybe don't play Skullman. Check with your neighbors first.
Yeah, be considerate of the people sitting at the tables next to you. When you gesture wildly, to try not to hit anyone.
Check if you're playing on TTS. Check the noise gating on your microphone. Make sure it's not so aggressive that it cuts you out.
Yep. That can be an issue. And I think I mentioned this, but I'm just to make sure. If your opponent's also good at range 2, then you are often going to need to lean into your boosts and edge them out on value because you have a pretty solid boost kit. Like if they're also happy to stand at range 2 and strike and wild swing, like some of the other characters that we'll talk about in a second, but then you go, okay, well, it's nice that you can do that, but I'm invincible. It's nice that you can do that, but I have +4 power and +1 speed. Like, that's how you get a value edge on people who think their favorite range is 2, because it is most of the time, but not when you have those boosts in play, because those boosts are godlike. Oh, and this one too, of course, which says actually it's mine.
Yeah, no, I don't care how good your range 2 is. My range 2 is better.
Yep. Okay, I think.
Okay, awesome.
Don't think I have any other notes there.
That was great. So if like me, you are a relative newbie to Exceed. I really have experience back to season 3. We've already laid out a couple of characters who clearly share, if Skullman is the reward Wildswinger, he has some descendants over here. Who are some other characters who you might recommend Skullman to if you found out that like they mained these guys or something?
It depends slightly on what you like about him, but if you like so part of this is like the fantasy of Skullman, right? Is that you are just flailing and it works. I
Right.
actually think Skullman's a good bit harder than that. I think he's more interesting than that. Because like you, like I said, like you can't just flail every strike and expect to win most of them. Um, you aren't cut out for it. You will have to play a decent amount of neutral, and figuring out how to manage your resources and then determine which tools to use at which moments in neutral, I find fairly interesting.
Right.
So if you're excited by the fantasy, but you think Skullman is too much work, let me grab Marathi
Oh
because
yeah,
he
sure.
actually does that.
Right.
um, this is the living sweep. He is the man who says I can just strike basically every turn, probably forever, and heal
Right.
wild swing and gain resources through it. Um, he is a consistency swinger. He is somebody who says I can flail all the time and it will still probably work because he's a consistency wild swinger, not a reward wild swinger.
Right.
Um, if this completely insane boost kit appeals to you and you like don't mind that your attack quality was questionable
Questionable.
as
Yeah.
a result,
There's a lot of
then
sideways cards on this table, D.
a bit, yeah. Um, then I mean, honestly, like skim a decent amount of Red Horizon. They often have ridiculous boosts. They often
Right.
have very questionable attacks,
Right.
um, including characters like Vincent, who is much more grapplery than Skullman, but has a really good boost kit and a really janky attack kit. I will not spoil Vincent. That's a different lesson.
Yeah. Looking forward to the Vincent lesson.
I just realized I'm Vincent, aren't I?
You
Um,
are. Yes.
yep. All right. Yep. Okay. Well, we'll save that for another time. But yeah, so season 1 is characterized by I have Big Numb Ultra, I have Big Value Exceed mode, I have some attacks that are incredibly awkward or incredibly situational or incredibly specific or just force, and I have some
Right.
boosts that are awesome, and then other boosts that are overpriced, but which I'll probably have to play anyway. Um, if you like stat boosts, you can see that you don't have a lot of them. You have a nice handful, but it's Street Fighter characters have stat boosts as a whole. Um, you said other than these. Do we want to make these more explicit?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Sure. Yeah. These guys work just as well.
yeah, like Dan and Leo are the big ones who are, hey, range 2 reward based wild swinger. Check, like both of them. Yes, that's
Yep.
sure sounds right.
That's pretty
Uh,
much that. They're Skullman's kids.
yep, some amount of ultra text that is related to weirdness with when you wild swing them. That is also on both of them.
Yep.
Um, and then unreliable attacks, far more Dan. Um, Dan has both stronger and far jankier attacks than Leo and and also than Skullman.
Yeah.
But that
I
is
I
Dan life.
I feel like the way that again Rose taught me Dan, and the takeaway that I had from that is that uh Dan players are working really hard to make it look like they're flailing wildly and beating you.
Yes,
I feel like Skullman specifically has that vibe where
he
if you're
does.
doing everything right, it will look like you're playing like an idiot and then you win.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. If you want to actually flail, play Marathi. Um, this is not to say that playing Marathi correctly means that you are flailing. I'm just saying that
Right.
if you want to flail and do anything of substance, that's like one of the only characters that you can play.
She
You
sure
will
can
still
do
lose.
that.
You will still mostly lose, but you will at least feel like you did something. Whereas flailing
Right.
randomly with most characters is just not going to work.
Right.
Um, uh, let's see. Anything else? Um, mm, not. I'm not particularly thinking of anyone obvious. Yeah, Dan really feels like the successor, and Leo is very much a Strive character. He's pretty different in design patterns, but he also fits this model. Like Skullman, he does have some consistency tools. Like if you want a particular thing to be your thing, you can do that. It will be on top of your deck when
Right.
you need it to. It will cost you
Right.
something because
Sure.
you're a Strive character, but You have that. You have a few tools to do that. You just can't be using them most of the time. You need to be running the odds most of the time.
Right, just like with Skullman. Yeah, you
Just like
can't
with
you
Skullman.
can't sustain that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, can't
Well,
really think of anything
perfect.
else.
All right. Well, D, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the lesson.
Absolutely.
I really did come in knowing almost nothing, and I feel like I've got a pretty good grounding in Skullman theory. Uh, Folks at home, hope you learned something as well. Hope you enjoyed it. I will see you all for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Oh, stay hydrated.
Please do.